Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel Canada Immigration. We hope you're doing great. Well, in this episode, we'll discuss processing time changes for PR cards, visitor visas, super visas, work permits, study permits, and SAWP. So, to get all the information, pay attention and watch the video through to the end. Please hit like and subscribe, and don't forget to push the notification bell for upcoming episodes. So, without any further delay, let's jump into the video. These processing timelines are given to provide applicants for visas or immigration to Canada an idea of how long it would take to complete their applications. Additionally, potential applicants who desire to submit an application for a Canadian immigration or visa can acquire a feel of what to anticipate before doing so. These processing durations are provided so that candidates for Canadian immigration and visas can obtain a rough indication of the status of their applications based on data gathered over the last 6 months. These processing times are intended to provide new weekly processing times. Furthermore, the processing period starts when the application is received by IRCC and concludes when the immigration officer makes a determination about the application. Let us first tell you about IRCC processing times for citizenship and PR cards. There have been no changes since last week in the processing period for citizenship grants, which is now 24 months. The processing period for citizenship certificates, which serve as proof of citizenship, is now 15 months, and there have been no recent adjustments. The current processing period for resuming citizenship is 34 months, and there have been no changes since last week. For renunciation of citizenship, the current processing time is 15 months, and there have been no changes since last week. For search of citizenship records, the current processing time is 16 months, and there have been no changes since last week. For new PR card, the current processing time is 180 days, which means 9 days more 6 last week. And for PR card renewals, the current processing time is 74 days, which means 3 days less 6 last week. Now, moving on, IRCC processing time for family sponsorship. For spouse or common law partner living outside Canada, the current processing time is 17 months and have been no changes since last week. For spouse or common law partner living inside Canada, the current processing time is 13 months and have been no changes since last week. For parents or grandparents PR, the current processing time is 38 months and have been no changes since last week. The IRCC's most current official statistics show that there were 918,300 applications still pending in Canada. Furthermore, the IRCC service criteria were still being followed when handling 1.055 million applications as of December 31, 2022. The IRCC was handling about 1.97 million applications in total. Next is processing time for Canadian passport. For in Canada new passport, regular application submitted in person at Service Canada Centre Passport Services. It takes 10 business days to process, and there have been no changes in the processing time since last week. For in Canada new passport, regular application submitted by mail to Service Canada Centre. It takes 20 business days to process, and there have been no changes in the processing time since last week. For in Canada urgent pickup, it takes 1 business days to process, and there have been no changes in the processing time since last week. For in Canada express pickup, it takes 9 business days to process, and there have been no changes in the processing time since last week. And for regular passport application mailed from outside Canada, it takes 20 business days to process, and there have been no changes in the processing time since last week. Now, let us tell you about the processing time for economic class. For Canadian Experience Class CEC, it takes 20 months to process, and there have been no changes in the processing time since last week. For Federal Skilled Worker Program, it takes 30 months to process, and there have been no changes in the processing time since last week. For Federal Skilled Trades Program, it takes 63 months to process, and there have been no changes in the processing time since last week. Next, for Provincial Nominee Program, PNP via Express Entry, it takes 12 months to process, and there have been no changes in the processing time since last week. For Non-Express Entry PNP, it takes 21 months to process and there have been no changes in the processing time since last week. For Quebec skilled workers, QSW, it takes 19 months to process and there have been no changes in the processing time since last week. For Quebec business class, it takes 66 months to process and there have been no changes in the processing time since last week. For federal self-employed, it takes 41 months to process and there have been no changes in the processing time since last week. For Atlantic Immigration Pilot AIP, it takes 15 months to process and there have been no changes in the processing time since last week. And for Startup Visa, it takes 32 months to process and there have been no changes in the processing time since last week. Finally, let us tell you about the processing time for temporary residence application. First, for visitor visa outside Canada, it varies country by country. For India, the processing time is 122 days, 8 days less than last week. For United States, the processing time is 42 days, 2 days more than last week. For Pakistan, the processing time is 3. Have been no changes since last week, 3. And for UK, it is 155 days, 2 days less than last week. Now, coming on visitor extension, visitor record. For online applications, the processing time is 205 days. For paper-based applications, the processing time is 96 days. Now, for study permit outside Canada, the processing time is 9 weeks. For study permit inside Canada, the processing time is 5 weeks. Moving on, study permit extension. For online applications, the processing time is 164 days. For paper-based applications, the processing time is 158 days. Next is work permit outside Canada. It also varies by country. For India, the processing time is 8 weeks. For United States, the processing time is 10 weeks. And for UK, the processing time is 7 weeks. Work permit inside Canada. For online applications, the processing time is 167 days. For paper-based applications, the processing time is 60 days. Next, International Experience Canada, current season. The processing time is 7 weeks for Seasonal Agricultural Workers Program, SAWP. The processing time is 25 days. And finally, for Electronic Travel Authorization, ETA, it is 5 minutes. That is all for today, in this video. What are your thoughts on this? Please let us know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching the entire video. Hopefully, the information is useful to you. See you later, in the next episode. Till then, take care.